Hi, I'm Dave Zersen, and I'd like to reflect with you on some of the days in our months from the church calendar. You probably know that there are major feasts, festivals, those words are used kind of interchangeably, that remember the life of Christ, that remember leaders in the church down through the centuries. And some of those are forgotten by us for the most part, and some of them are major events such as Christmas and Easter. But today I'd like to remember an event from the month of June, specifically June 29th, which remembers the feast of Saints Peter and Paul. I have a funny story that helped me to remember that because some years ago, when my wife and I took a trip to Albuquerque, we decided to drive a little bit further and visit the Acoma Pueblo, an Indian reservation, Native American reservation on the top of a butte in the middle of the desert. I had read something about it, and so we drove to this place. You can see it from Highway 40, and we parked our car at the base of the butte and climbed the steep incline, and as we climbed we could hear drums playing. So I wondered what kind of great Native American festival we were about to experience. And as we came up to the top, there was a man who was beating his drum like crazy, and I said to him, What's the event? What's going on? And he said, it's the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul. So I thought to myself, here's a Native American Christian who knows more about this than I do, and I probably should have known that this was such a celebration because it's an event that goes back over 1700 years. People have been remembering that particular day because St. Peter and St. Paul were either martyred around that time. At least that's the memory of the church. So it would be interesting for us just to spend a few moments reflecting on those two leaders in our church community, St. Peter and St. Paul. Both of them have played an enormous role in the lifetime of our church, but for different reasons. Peter was a Jew, one who had a life experience with Jesus and could remember all kinds of events that took place between them, is recorded for us in some of the sermons in the book of Acts, in the letter of 1 Peter, which is generally regarded as of his writing, perhaps written from prison. And Paul, also a Jew, who never had a physical experience of Christ during his lifetime, but who reached out, unlike Peter, to the non-Jewish people to proclaim the message of the gospel, just as Peter had reached out to the Jewish people. So there was at some point in their career a lot of tension because Peter was not sure that the gospel should be brought to non-Jewish people and under what conditions. And Paul's whole ministry was bringing the gospel to people who were neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female, slave nor free, barbarian nor Scythian. I mean, Paul was going at it. And he was recalled in the year 50 to Jerusalem to meet with Peter and James and the leaders of the church and to explain himself, to say how could he possibly be going out and sharing the good news with people who were not Jews or who at least did not practice the things which Jewish law required. The result of that conference was relatively positive, and James gave 3 requirements that would be expected of the people who were converted, who became the followers of Jesus. But Peter and Paul went their separate ways, and as tradition tells us, they both ended up in Rome in prison. Wouldn't it be fascinating to know if they actually were there at the same time in prison and had a chance to talk with one another? What kind of things might have come out of that experience? But we are left to only wonder about that, because we can't know for sure that they were both there and that they ever had a chance to meet. There's a wonderful etching in stone of Peter and Paul, which comes from sometime in the early 4th century, sometime in the early 300s, shows both of them on this plaque of stone with a picture of the Chi-Rho, the cross, in the first two letters in the word of Christ, showing these leaders of the church for us from that early age, and their life together, despite the tension which existed between them, has been celebrated on the 29th of June for now 1700 years. It's amazing that kind of length of time can allow us something which is still so meaningful to us today, when we are struggling with the question about who is, take us right down to the tensions we're struggling with in the United States, the tensions between black and white. Those kinds of tensions are set aside by St. Paul, who said neither Jew nor Greek, bond nor free, male nor female, barbarian nor Scythian. Those were outlying tribes from Judea. What in the world could it have meant to Peter when he had to learn that all people were people who could be appreciated by God, loved by God, and brought into God's family? So that challenge from 1700 years ago is meaningful for us today, and the feast of St. Peter and Paul reminds us that here were two men who had to struggle to try to decide who could really be a Christian, who could really belong, and they came to an agreement which said we all belong. We are all one in Christ. We cannot separate ourselves from one another, because we all share the good news that we have been loved by God in Jesus Christ and set free to share that message of hope and forgiveness with all people. May that be a comforting challenge for us as we look at our neighbors around us today.